Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I am Paul Ndiho. This weekend, Cameroon stands at a political crossroads. At 92 years old, President Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of state, is seeking an 8th term in office. For many Cameroonians, this election feels less like a contest and more like a referendum on his 43 years in power. Let's pause for a moment. What does this mean for people in Cameroon? This is certainly something that a lot of people did not see coming. But for sure, it's something that a lot of us have been thinking about. A lot of us have been wondering what's happening to this country of Cameroon. It's important to note that Paul Biya has been in power for a very, very long time. When Paul Biya first took over office in 1982, he was seen as a quiet reformer, a technocrat who promised to modernize the country. After the long rule of Ahmadou Ahidjo. But over time, his leadership turned into one of Africa's longest-running political dynasties. He has survived coups, economic crises, and growing opposition while maintaining a tight grip on the state. Over the years, Biya has mastered the art of political survival. In 2008, his allies in parliament removed the presidential term limits, allowing him to run again indefinitely. That decision, many analysts say, cemented his dominance and silenced hopes for generational change. Today, his decision to run again has reignited tensions. His supporters call him a symbol of stability. His critics say he's out of touch, too old, and for a guy who doesn't even live in the country to be running for president. And he's no longer capable of leading a young and restless nation. Let's face it. You know, for context, for somebody who has been in power for that long, it's something that some of us take for granted. But for sure, 43 years in power. Let's put it in context. I am 47 years old. That means he has been in power almost my entire life. In those 47 years old, I've been able to do things, gone places, gone to school. I've done a lot of things. In Cameroon, people have experienced one leader, not a single change. There is so much this country could do, but because you have one leader who is on top, who doesn't want to leave, this is what we're talking about. 47 years, I'm 47 years old. He's been in power for 43 years old. Now, let's talk about the election. Cameroon's elections come amid deep social and economic challenges. Youth unemployment is very, very high. Prices are rising, and corruption continues to weigh on the economy. More than half of the country's population is under 30, meaning that I'm way older than these people. But many young people feel politically powerless. How do you even try to engage in a system that has cut you out? That's what young Cameroonians are facing. They can't compete for some of these positions because you have all these people, very old people, who have been in power for a very long time, and they don't want to cede power for these other people with different ideas. You know, it's interesting in a way. When I was younger, my president, who has also been in power for a very long time, came to speak to the primary school that I was attending. And he told us that you, the young people at the time, I think I was maybe about 9 or 11, or 9 or 10, you, the young people, are the future leaders of tomorrow. And he kept emphasizing the future leaders of tomorrow. The same guy, just like Paul Biya, is still holding on to that spot. So one wonders, is it us as the people who have failed to see what's going on, or is it that some of these leaders just want to stay in power and basically they become everything that we don't like? When you overstay in power, so many things happen. Corruption, that's why some of these places where you have had leaders who have stayed in power for a very long time, there is corruption there. They can't get rid of corruption. Why? Because the corruption, but being in power for so long, it corrupts you. So almost everybody who does anything for you wants you to bribe them. The system has collapsed. The same thing in Cameroon. The system has collapsed. So you have people there who, unless you bribe them, they cannot do anything for you, right? So those are some of the challenges that we are seeing in Cameroon. But perhaps more importantly, I spoke to a young person in Daula who told me, I quote, I was born under Paul Biya. My parents too were born under Paul Biya. And my children are now going to be under Paul Biya. You tell me, what type of country is this, where almost 3 generations of people have all lived through one leader? That's very, very profound. And for some of you who have not maybe experienced this, when a young person says this, it means that that sense of frustration runs deep, and not just for that young person, but for many other people. Voters say they have lost faith in the system, and that's dangerous for democracy, because apathy helps those already in power. Despite growing calls for him to step aside, President Biya remains firm and a dominant force. His party, the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, controls parliament, controls the military, and the regional administrations. The Electoral Commission, which is supposed to be a body that is independent, obviously, how can you be independent serving some guy who has been in power for 43 years? Basically, you cannot even try to challenge the system. You're just there at the whims of this person who appointed you in the first place. There's no way that commission can claim that it's independent. So that a lot of young people looking at that, they say the system that is supposed to guard against such people is aiding and abetting these leaders to stay in power. So you have these periodic elections, but what do they mean? Do they mean that change is coming? Absolutely not, because it's the same old system. You have people there who don't want to leave power, and the electoral body that is there is going to do just precisely that, to keep the same guy, because those guys also want to protect their jobs. Meanwhile, parts of the country are engulfed in conflict. In the English-speaking northwest and southwestern regions, fighting between government forces and the separatist groups has displaced thousands of people. Schools have been closed for years. Roads are unsafe and paved. Man, there are no hospitals in some of those places. Many people say they don't even know if they will be able to vote peacefully and safely. This ongoing conflict has become one of Biya's biggest challenges. Critics accuse his government of ignoring legitimate grievances, about marginalizing them instead of responding to them with force. The result has been many, many years of violence, mistrust, instability, Regions that were once vibrant and productive are now dead. There's no commerce taking place in those places. There's no infrastructure development. Basically, people are there fending for themselves, and yet they have a government in power. Let's picture this for a minute. Let's look at this very closely. It's something that people here in the Western world take for granted. But if you live in Cameroon or in any country where you've had these long-time leaders staying in power for a very, very long time, this is exactly what you experience. This, what we are talking about in Cameroon, does not just happen in a vacuum. It happens because the leaders who are in charge have put people in place to make sure that the system works the way they want it to work. These people, you cannot challenge their authority. They are the judges, they are the politicians. Whatever decision that is made in that country has to come through these leaders on top. And they have been in power for a very long time. It's not going to change. So what we are saying is that something needs to happen. Maybe the youth need to change their tactics. They need to look at what other countries have done. For example, the youth in Kenya. Look at Madagascar right now. Look across the pond in Asia, Nepal. Guess what? Nepalese were able to the youth were able to come out in masses and brought about regime change. Why can't the people in Cameroon, why can't young people in all these countries where you've had leaders who have been there for a very long time, maybe taken matters into their own hands? Because at the end of the day, these guys are not going to relinquish power without people, wanting to take that power away from them. If everything is fine, sure. But clearly, for somebody who has been in power for 43 years, you have places where there is no electricity, places where there is no water, running water, no schools, nothing. You can't justify 43 years of being in power. While his supporters campaign on promises of peace and unity, ordinary Cameroonians are asking hard questions. Why has the conflict ended? Why do we have to, scramble for food? Why can't we have enough food? Why are there no jobs? All these voices of dissent are still silenced. And young people are not going to sit back. Young people are saying maybe it's about time we did something for our country. Because let's not forget that when Paul Biya came into power, he was at that age where he was still a youthful guy. He had everything ahead of him. But now, as life dictates, for sure, his life is behind him. He needs to cede power. He needs to figure out how to bring a new, younger leadership or generation to the realms of power in Cameroon. He needs to figure out how to bring the young people, because you're looking at a country that has almost like 65% of people below 45 years old. The numbers could even be more. Even in Biya's own circle, signs of fatigue are showing up. Last December, a Catholic Archbishop, Samuel Kanda, went on French radio to say that it was not realistic for Biya to continue governing at his age. And in a rare public moment of defiance, Biya's own daughter, Brenda Biya, posted a video saying, I quote, "My father has made many people suffer." Oh, before she deleted that tweet. So, so look, they say charity begins at home. His own family members are beginning to criticize his style of leadership. That tells you that things are not all right. For sure, this guy, something is up. Something is up, and I think that young people maybe need to take cues from the younger Biya, the daughter who went public with one of those stunts and saying that things were not normal as expected. Still, the president presses on. In July, he told his supporters that he was responding to the numerous and instant uh, calls from the people to stay in office. His opponents say the calls came not from the people, but from a loyal elite who depend on him for their own survival. Opposition candidates have remained divided, and that's the problem. So you have all, for anybody who has been in politics that long, they're not just going to go away just by you holding an election. Forget about it. These people, they have set a system. The whole system is built around them. So you can't just wish them away with a piece of paper. Now, the challenge that I see in Cameroon and with like most other African countries that are dealing with leaders who have been in power for a very long time, somehow opposition candidates never want to unite. Think for a moment. Think for a moment. If, let's say, opposition in Cameroon, opposition in Uganda, opposition in Rwanda, opposition in all these countries, in Congo, where you've had leaders who have been in power, or in Equatorial Guinea, where you've had leaders who have been in power for a very long time. If, let's say, opposition leaders, they're united for a second and fronted one candidate, I really think from deep down in my heart that if opposition united, they could dislodge this guy who has been in power for 43 years. So opposition needs to rethink their strategy. They cannot just keep thinking that they can change the status quo by every one of them wanting to run on their own merits, which is okay, well and good. But that strategy doesn't work. It hasn't worked for 43 years. Why is it going to work now? It's about time opposition candidates fronted one person, but it's too late now for Cameroon, because you head to the elections over the weekend. So it might be impossible for opposition candidates to rally behind one candidate, right? But opposition in Cameroon remains divided, unable to unite behind a single candidate. One of the most prominent, Maurice Kamto, was disqualified from running after Elikam ruled that his paperwork was invalid. Of course, again, these are same old tactics that Biya has used against the same guy. Maurice has run, he's a great guy. I met him once, very interesting guy, but he has had challenges. For some reason, Biya cannot let this guy run as his opponent, because he knows if Maurice was given a platform, it's over for him. It's over for him. So he will do anything to make sure that one of the most, I guess, highly qualified politicians in opposition, Maurice Kamto, is denied the right to be on the ballot. But let's move on. I think even with that, you have people, other candidates who are just there basically just to occupy space. I don't think these opposition candidates can make any significant moves when it comes to the election on Saturday. Because I'm reminded of a saying from Joseph Stalin, one of the communist leaders of the 21st century. He once said that it doesn't matter how many people come to vote. What matters is who counts the vote. And in Cameroon, it's not a surprise that the people who are going to determine this election are people who have been appointed by Biya. The Electoral Commission there is not an independent body. It's something that is there to serve President Biya and his cronies. That's simply it. No other way around it. So the stage is set for another Biya victory. But at what cost? If he wins again, as many expect, his presidency will extend to nearly half a century. Now let's pause for a moment. Do you know what it means to be in power for 50 years? Now I'm looking at Cameroon. Do you know what it means to be in power for 50 years? Because if Paul Biya wins again, he's going to cement that. He's going to make sure that he's been, at least his family, has been in power for 50 years in power. That's very, very unfortunate. It's one of those moments that a lot of us in the diaspora should reflect on and think, what can we do to help to bring about change? What can be done by young Cameroonians to stop this from happening? I mean, if this guy wins this election, he's going to be one of the oldest people running or ruling a country. One of the oldest and perhaps one of the longest serving leaders in the world to be at the helm of a country. Somebody who doesn't even live there. Media reports say that this guy lives somewhere in Switzerland. So he only shows up when, he can barely talk. He can barely remember where he's been, But this guy still wants to be in charge, still wants to be in power. Then, if he wins again, as many expect, his presidency will extend nearly half a century. Few world leaders have held on to power that long. For his supporters, this marks stability. Others say that clearly sign that Cameroon's democracy has been hollowed out. 50 years is enough, my friends. Economically, the country has potential. It has rich oil, cocoa, and natural gas. Prosperity hasn't reached everyone. Rural areas remain underdeveloped. And corruption continues to choke the public services, man. In cities like Daula, young people said they are tired of empty promises that never materialize. I have a lot of friends who live in the English-speaking country and the French-speaking side of the country. I mean, their realities are so different. When you talk to people who are from regions that have been cut off, they have no future. You talk to people who are living in regions that Biya considers to be favorable to him. They are living a good life. So, frankly speaking, you have a divided country along tribal or ethnic lines. You have the English-speaking Cameroonians and the French-speaking Cameroonians who live like in two different worlds. But what is fascinating is that no matter what, these people are resilient. These people have failed. They have said, no matter what, we will survive and we will come through out of this stronger. Some of them, to this day, they would argue that no matter what life has brought to them, they have been able to stand against the tide, to hold strong and be what they are able to do. Families struggle all the time, but they have hope. They think that at one day, Paul Biya will leave or will die in office and change will come to Cameroon. It's fascinating to see all this stuff. It's, doing the kind of job that we do as journalists, you travel to places, you go. I remember my first time visiting Cameroon. I was in Daula, and I met some very, very enterprising young people, very highly educated, very, they have life ahead of them. They think outside of the box. These are people who want to bring about changes. They have different ideas. But the one thing that almost every person shared with me was when it comes to politics, they have no voice. They cannot even express their opinions. This election isn't just about who becomes president. It's about what kind of future Cameroonians want. A nation led by the same man for 43 years? Can that nation really reinvent itself? Can the youth reclaim their voice? And can they bring peace to those regions that have been in conflict for a very long time? Frankly speaking, this is a country divided by history and power. For now, the answer remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: Cameroon stands at crossroads. The outcome of this election will either open a new chapter for that reinforces the order, or one that is defined by a new generation. As Cameroonians head to the polls this weekend, the world will be watching. This is the dawn of renewal and the continuation of a legacy that refuses to fade away. Let's pause for a moment. 43 years in power might not sound, to those people who, for context, might not sound like a big deal, but it's huge. You have people who have never known any leader except Paul Biya. You have people who have lived, because the life expectancy for some reason in some of these countries vary. So you might find that there are people who have died in their early 30s, late 30s, 40s. They never saw another president. They never saw change come during their lifetime. So that's what I mean by 43 years of one-man rule. And even if he was to leave right now, I don't think he's just going to cede power to his opposition or opponents. He's going to cede power to one of his cronies, one of his sons or daughters. And the legacy continues. So we haven't seen the end of this story. I think Paul Biya is here to stay, and he's going to stay for another, if he can, health-wise, I don't know how he's doing, but bless his heart, if he's able to pull this off, then he will be one of the longest leaders and the oldest leaders of all time to be serving as president. Now, I was expecting somebody from Cameroon, a journalist to join, an activist to join this conversation. But again, he's told me that he's unable to make it. He's facing his own technical challenges. He had to rush. He had no power where he was, so he was trying to find a good place where he can get network to join me live. But unfortunately, he's not here. So I guess just to wrap, we want to know what you think about the West African country of Cameroon as it heads to the polls this weekend on October 12th, 2025. Paul Biya's decision to run again is dividing the nation. Okay, share your comments and thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and join me, Paul Ndiho, on Substack, X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Spotify. And of course, we'll keep you posted for the continuing coverage here on this platform across all our social media platforms as these elections happen over the weekend. I keep you posted, and good night for now. Thank you so much for watching.